Could you please let just this child stay for the night? In the middle of a freezing winter night, a mother and her child, dressed in ragged clothes, appeared in front of my rundown apartment. I couldn't just leave this fragile-looking pair out in the cold. Well, okay, just for one night. When I finally took a good look at their faces, I realized the woman was stunningly beautiful. With my heart pounding, I ended up spending the night with them. My name is Ben. I'm in my 30s, broke, with no hobbies, no girlfriend, and working a dead-end job. To top it off, I'm a corporate drone. I was raised by a single mother in what you could call a stereotypically poor household, but thanks to her tearful efforts, I made it through high school. I was planning to start working after graduation, but she pushed me, saying, "Go to college, get a good job, and make life easier for me." With her raspy voice from too much drinking urging me on, I took on the challenge of college entrance exams and managed to get into college. Now, I'm slowly trudging down the path of corporate slavery, burdened with student loans. Ever since I started working, I've been sending a small amount of money to my mom each month. But the woman who pushed me to do so is still working with that same raspy voice, proudly saying, "I'm still young, so I don't need to rely on you." Yet, after each monthly transfer, I get a thank you message online, something she still hasn't quite gotten the hang of. She's sneaky like that. When I visit home occasionally, she smiles and says, "You better treat me to something good when you come back." The crow's feet at the corners of her eyes seem to deepen every year. If I mentioned that, my rough-around-the-edges mom would probably smack me on the head. It must have been tough for my uneducated mom to raise me on her own. She believed that if I just went to college, I'd get a well-paying job and lead a comfortable life. Because of that belief, she made sure I got through college. Now, I can't bring myself to complain about the reality of working long hours for low pay and barely scraping by with student loan payments. It may sound pessimistic, but I've inherited my mom's mindset of as long as you're alive, you're winning and things will work out somehow. I might as well admit it, I'm easygoing and tend to avoid conflict. Thanks to this personality, aside from being broke, I've managed to muddle through life fairly well. I'm like one of those background characters in a comic, someone who never stands out as the protagonist. But background characters are crucial in the real world. It's people like us who keep the world turning, enduring unfairness to maintain order. There's no such thing as a world filled only with protagonists. So cold. It's 1 a.m. on December 24th. Attending the company's year-end party is practically mandatory. Of course, being the corporate drone I am, I couldn't skip it. Despite the busy end-of-year schedule, I found myself drinking with colleagues I didn't particularly like, sipping on alcohol I didn't particularly enjoy. Now, I'm on my way home, slightly tipsy, exhaling white puffs into the cold air. The warmth from the alcohol that had heated my body earlier has long since dissipated, leaving me feeling chilled to the bone. With the scent of snow in the air. The weather woman said last month that this winter would be likely to be mild. I wonder how she'll explain herself on tomorrow's broadcast. Hope I wake up to a snowstorm that stops the trains tomorrow. As I pondered this, arriving at my castle, my 35-year-old, rundown apartment, I suddenly heard a voice. "Excuse me." I was trying to climb the creaky stairs as quietly as possible when someone called out to me from below. The thought of someone speaking to me in the dead of night, especially from down by my feet, made me jump. In the shadows under the stairs was a woman. Next to her was a smaller figure, huddling close. What is it? Naturally, I felt a surge of caution towards someone speaking to me at this hour. "Could you please let us in?" Well. She insisted, just for one night or no, even just until the first trains start running, until we can get into the station. As I tried to gather my thoughts, the woman quickly ran up to the bottom of the stairs. I didn't want to cause any trouble in front of my thin-walled apartment building at this hour. I sighed, letting out a puff of white breath, and turned to face the voice. The flickering light of the fluorescent bulb revealed the woman's face, which I hadn't been able to see clearly in the darkness. "She's gorgeous." I was at a loss for words, stunned by the beauty of the woman before me. "Please, at least take in my child. I'm begging you." She held a little girl close as she pleaded. The girl, who seemed to have inherited her mother's fair complexion, was trembling so much that even in the dim light, her pale skin appeared almost blue. The sight of the desperate mother and child huddled together was filled with a sense of despair, yet, to my shame, I found it oddly enchanting. It's like a painting of the Virgin Mary or something, I thought to myself. It seems the alcohol hadn't fully worn off, even though I thought the cold had sobered me up. Well, if it's just for one night. Scratching my head, I reluctantly gave them permission to stay for the night. As I glanced outside, I noticed sleet beginning to fall, unable to fully turn into snow. A few days later. Welcome home. I'm back. Greeting me as I returned from work was Anna, the beautiful woman I took in on Christmas Eve. What was supposed to be a one-night stay in my rundown apartment has turned into a temporary refuge for the mother and child. When I saw them in the brighter light of my apartment, I realized just how thin they both were. And I learned that they had been living like homeless people for over a week. They had run out of money, and that's when the cold, snowy night caught up with them. Even though I was a bit tipsy that night, I'm not the kind of person who could just throw them out once I'd taken them in. The fact that their clothes were relatively clean suggested they had once lived a better life. I'm curious about how such a beautiful woman and her child ended up homeless, but knowing wouldn't change anything, so I haven't asked. Besides, it's honestly a bit too much trouble to find out more. Hi, Emily. Hi. Anna's daughter, Emily, is 5 years old. She's an extremely quiet child. Are kids her age usually this quiet? It might be unfair to compare her to myself at that age. I was always running around with a snotty nose even after being scolded by my mom, but she seems unusually subdued. In fact, she seems to be aware of my presence, almost as if she's holding back. And sometimes, she speaks in a surprisingly mature way for her age. Whether it's caution or something else, I haven't seen her smile even once in the few days they've been here. This looks delicious. Please, eat as much as you like. Every evening, a meal is now prepared on my small table. Honestly, the fact that I'm still letting them stay might have something to do with these meals. Supporting the two of them financially is pretty tough, but my laid-back attitude of it'll work out somehow keeps me from worrying too much. Tonight, the table is filled with the delicious aroma of ginger pork. Sitting down to a warm dinner every night with the mother and child almost feels like. So this is what a family dinner feels like. The word slipped out before I realized it, and Anna, who was eating across from me, looked at me with a puzzled expression. The ginger pork is really good. I quickly stuffed a piece of pork into my mouth to cover my embarrassment. Yes, it's nice to share a meal with others, isn't it? As someone raised in a single-parent household, I never had the experience of sitting down to dinner with family. My mom was often working late, so I usually ate alone. Anna's gentle smile in response to my comment, without any hint of denial, made me feel a bit ticklish inside. Not bad. The mild taste of the miso soup I sipped to hide my embarrassment was just to my liking. After dinner, as I lazed around watching videos, I noticed Emily quietly tinkering with something in the corner of the room. Over the past few days, I had only seen her reading what seemed like complicated books for a child her age, so I was curious and decided to ask. Emily, what are you working on? A puzzle, Emily replied, startled by my voice. Hesitantly, she showed me what she was working on. It wasn't the usual puzzle where you fit pieces together to create a picture. Instead, it was a wooden puzzle where you had to fit specific shapes into a mold using only the designated pieces. Curious, I asked Emily to explain how it worked, and I decided to give it a try myself. But as I increased the difficulty, it turned out to be quite challenging. I found myself sitting cross-legged in front of the puzzle, scratching my head in frustration. Emily, who seemed unsure at first, eventually joined in and started helping me. Like this, here. Wow! That's amazing! In the end, Emily effortlessly completed even the most difficult puzzles, leaving me in awe and abandoning any attempt to solve them on my own. Am I weird? Emily asked, her eyes filled with uncertainty. Huh? You're not weird at all. It's incredible that you can solve something this hard so easily. I can't do it myself. Emily's face lit up at my words, and for the first time, I saw her smile, a smile that made her look her age. It made me so happy that I couldn't help but smile too, and we continued playing with the puzzle together. From that day on, Emily seemed to warm up to me, and she started talking to me more often. Can I look at this, Ben? She pointed to a book on programming and web design. It was one of those books I had bought a few years ago when I decided to learn something new, given my lack of hobbies. Though it seemed too advanced for a 5-year-old, I didn't see any harm in letting her try, so I recommended the simplest one. Aimed at elementary school kids. Sure, you can read any of these books if you like. You can also use this laptop if you want. Feeling that she might enjoy it, I handed her my old, dusty laptop. Well, if it keeps her entertained, why not? That casual thought soon led Emily to become completely absorbed in the books and the computer. That year turned out to be one for the history books. A new virus spread worldwide, throwing everyone into a panic. Japan was no exception, and by mid-February, many companies, including mine, where I worked in the travel industry, had started implementing remote work. Would you like some lunch? Just past noon, Anna peeked through the sliding door of my tiny 2-bedrooms apartment to ask me quietly. You can talk normally, I'm on my lunch break. With that, I decided to eat the lunch Anna had prepared for me. Sitting cross-legged at the table with the documents I needed to review still in hand, I found a plate of omelette placed right in front of me. Wow, a fancy lunch. Thanks. My usual instant noodles for lunch had been unexpectedly upgraded thanks to remote work. Anna's cooking was always delicious, and I was genuinely grateful for it. I'm glad you like it. Just be careful not to get ketchup on your papers. Anna, who had started speaking more casually with me than before, seemed to enjoy watching me eat, especially since I always exclaimed, "This is delicious," no matter what she cooked. Today, too, she sat sipping tea, smiling as she watched me enjoy my meal. Is that the name of the company you work for, Ben? Suddenly, Anna's gaze landed on the name of the company printed on my documents. Yeah, I don't think I ever mentioned it before. I responded absent-mindedly, still looking at the papers. But when Anna didn't reply, I glanced up at her, curious. What's wrong? You look pale. Oh, it's nothing. It's definitely not nothing. Her obvious discomfort made me press her further. The CEO's son of that company, he's Emily's father. After a long pause, Anna finally revealed the truth. What? Are you talking about Mr. Johnson's son? You're saying he's Emily's father? Does that mean you were married to him? But as far as I knew, Mr. Johnson's son was still single, so many questions swirled in my head. We were never married. There was never any formal registration. He is Emily's father, but he never acknowledged her. I was at a loss for words, struggling to process what she was saying. But realizing my lunch break was almost over, I suggested we continue the conversation later in the evening. The rest of the afternoon was a blur, with Anna's words replaying in my mind, making it hard to concentrate on work. Finally, around 9 p.m., after Emily had gone to sleep, I sat down with Anna to hear the rest of the story. I used to be his secretary. The son of my company's CEO, Ken Johnson, is slated to be the next CEO, but he also runs another company. Anna revealed that she had worked as his secretary at that company. As they worked together, their relationship deepened, but without ever officially becoming a couple, which left Anna feeling increasingly uneasy. It was during this time that she became pregnant with Emily. When she informed Ken about the pregnancy, he casually asked, "Are you planning to keep it?" When Anna expressed her desire to have the baby, he responded, "Well, okay, then. Why don't you move into my apartment?" Recognition? Oh, sure. I'll take care of that. I'll handle all the paperwork when the time is right, so don't worry. Taking his word for it, Anna moved into his apartment and eventually gave birth to Emily. Things seemed to be going smoothly until Emily turned 3 and started attending daycare. Around that time, Ken stopped coming home regularly. When Emily turned 4, he dropped the bombshell that he was planning to marry another woman. Despite having lived with Anna and their child, Ken never married her, nor did he officially acknowledge Emily as his daughter. Anna confessed that she had confronted Ken countless times during her pregnancy, only for him to evade the issue each time. When she persisted, Ken finally said, "If you keep pushing, you should leave the apartment. I won't acknowledge the child, you know? Do you really want to raise a child without a father? But if you listen to me, I'll recognize the child and talk to my parents about getting married when the time is right. Which option is better for your child?" His soft yet manipulative tone made his cruelty even more evident. Over time, Anna became so conditioned that she stopped questioning Ken, unable to see how abnormal the situation had become. Then, last December, just after Emily turned 5, Anna was abruptly thrown out of the apartment with nothing. With no parents or relatives to rely on, Anna had lived as a homeless person for over a week before she met me. After hearing her story, I muttered, "That's just unbelievable." Anna, on the verge of tears, gave a small, bitter smile and looked down. "It's my fault. I kept asking him to marry me, even during my pregnancy. But he kept dodging the question, and when I pushed too hard, he threatened not to acknowledge Emily. Eventually, I stopped saying anything at all. I thought I was doing what was best for Emily, but in the end, I just ended up hurting her more than anyone else. I'm such an idiot, believing in him until it came to this. I'm a failure as a mother." Watching Anna clench her thin arms so tightly that they trembled was heartbreaking. "I know Ken Johnson well. As far as I know, he's never flaunted his status as the CEO's son and has always been kind to his subordinates. But is what Anna said really true? Is it possible that he's not the man I thought he was? Let's talk to Ken. I know him, so I can try to arrange a meeting. But the apartment is already gone, and the only place I could go is his office. I'll make an appointment. There's a board meeting at our company this week, and Ken should be there. I'll ask him to meet you. Just wait for now. I feel bad for dragging you into this, Ben. Don't worry about it. We're already in this together, right? Thank you." A few days later, on the day I had to go into the office, there was a board meeting. I waited until the meeting ended and approached Ken Johnson. "Mr. Johnson, could I have a word with you?" "Ben, it's been a while. What can I do for you? Our company isn't very large." So Ken knew all the names of the people on the administrative floor, making him a likable boss. He was friendly and easy to talk to, someone I'd always thought highly of. No, I hadn't. Until I heard Anna's story the other day. If everything she said is true, then Ken is a serious scumbag. Even now, as I speak to him, I'm still half doubting whether the man in front of me could really be that cruel. I'd like to arrange a meeting with someone if you have some time. Oh? With me? A client? No, it's a woman named Anna. I watched his expression closely as I mentioned her name. Let's talk in another room, he said, his smile still in place, but his previously warm demeanor seemed to turn cold and sharp. Looks like Anna might be right about him being a scumbag, I thought to myself. As soon as we entered the smallest meeting room, Ken was the first to speak. So, why does she want to meet with me? He was likely trying to gauge how much I knew. I think you have a good idea of her reasons, given your relationship with her. How much do you know? And what's your connection to her? I know the circumstances that led to her and her daughter's current situation. As for our relationship, we're friends. What are you trying to achieve here? His tone was guarded, carefully choosing his words to avoid giving away anything unnecessary. All I'm asking is for you to sit down and talk with her. No. There's no need for that. His cold response made me reflexively push back. She's your daughter, isn't she? Aren't you going to pay child support? Oh, so this is about money? Did she tell you I'm the father? Why would I pay when there's no proof she's my child? You promised her you'd acknowledge the child, didn't you? Did I? And she told you that, huh? No contract, no guarantee. You understand the basics of a contract, right? But, did it ever occur to you that you might be getting played? She's a beautiful woman. I'm sure she's fooled plenty of men. With a face like that, she could make a lot of money, even with a kid in tow. What the hell are you saying? His half-smiling, disgustingly cynical remarks made my blood boil. Calm down, it was just a joke. No need to get so worked up. You're really invested in her, huh? But that's none of my concern. Anyway, I have no obligation to meet with her. As if to signal that the conversation was over, Ken made a move to leave. Does Mr. Johnson know about this? I asked, stopping him. Are you trying to blackmail me? For the first time, Ken's smile vanished. Damn it, I've really screwed up. I thought, realizing too late that I'd made a serious misstep. Threatening your superior. You really don't know your place, do you? Ken flashed a smile again before leaving the room. The next day, while working remotely from home, I received an email on my computer. It was a termination notice. Of course, I saw this coming, I muttered. I had expected them to try to fire me for misconduct, but maybe they realized I could challenge that as wrongful termination. Instead, they claimed I was being let go for failing to meet job expectations, which was still unfair but more legally sound. Even though this ordinary dismissal was communicated via email without a formal written notice, it was still something I could contest. However, taking on a small, exploitative company like this, as opposed to a major corporation, would be an uphill battle. Especially since the person who made the decision is none other than Ken, an executive and the next CEO. The odds are definitely not in my favor. At least they promised to pay my severance, plus 1 month's salary for the remaining paid leave. Well, this is a mess. I sighed, taking off my computer glasses and looking up at the ceiling. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. Anna cried out. I got myself involved, so it's not your fault, Anna, I reassured her. I debated how much to tell her, but considering the situation, I knew I couldn't keep it from her. So, I told her about my termination. Anna looked like she was about to cry, apologizing me, while I apologized for not being able to arrange a meeting between her and Ken. No, it's okay. I can't afford to keep wallowing. For Emily's sake, and for yours, too, Ben. I was surprised to hear that she considered doing something for me. I haven't really done anything. Well, I've let you stay here, so I guess I've done something. But you've been making great meals and contributing with part-time work, so it's pretty much even. Don't worry about it. Thank you, really. Anna finally smiled, and I felt a sense of relief. Now, it's time to start job hunting again. Maybe I can find something with better conditions, I said, trying to sound upbeat, but inside, I was starting to feel the pressure. Given the current situation, finding a new job might not be easy. My last day at work would be the end of March. I had less than a month to find a company willing to hire someone mid-career. And to make matters worse, I had been fired. It was clear that getting to the interview stage would be challenging. On top of that, the world was in turmoil this year. Every industry was likely facing significant disruptions. In fact, the travel-related companies were already feeling the effects. Hey, Ben, have you thought about starting your own company? What? I was lost in thought, staring into space when Anna's unexpected suggestion left me speechless. What kind of company are you talking about? Her sudden talk of starting a business was so vague that I had to urge her to elaborate. I want to show you something, Anna said, calling out to Emily, who was, as usual, engrossed in her computer in the next room. Emily, show Ben what you've been working on. Emily opened the laptop and showed me the screen. Wait, is this? No way. Looks like it's time for a comeback, right? Anna's face lit up with a bright and excited expression, one I hadn't seen before. I'm in too. Let's get this plan rolling. I couldn't help but laugh at their enthusiasm, which was contagious. All right, let's do this. The three of us, aiming for a major comeback in life. At this point, I decided to embrace the whatever happens, happens attitude. I was all in for this gamble. Nearly a year has passed since then. The business we started has been thriving. We launched an e-commerce site, focusing on items like souvenirs and meals from accommodations that were previously only available on-site at tourist destinations. In the beginning, we hustled to secure partnerships with tourist associations, accommodations, and rail companies. But the ongoing pandemic and the resulting stay-at-home orders allowed us to secure many contracts. In a way, my previous job had prepared me well for this venture. The company took shape within the first month of its launch, and although it's bittersweet to say, the challenging global situation contributed to our success. We've since expanded the business, and it's been steadily growing. The real credit for our success goes to Emily. She's something of a prodigy. Using the books and the laptop I gave her, she taught herself to build a website and decided what products to sell on our e-commerce platform. Emily has an incredible ability to understand trends and anticipate what's coming next. Of course, as a child, some of her ideas were too far-fetched or impractical, and her web designs often had flaws. But her creativity and early programming skills were astonishing. Though I'm listed as the company's CEO, the initial idea for the business came from Emily. For the finer details in dealing with clients, I had the support of Anna, who is an excellent salesperson and secretary. Although things seem to be going smoothly now, I was really stressed when we first started the company. The main issue was, of course, funding. Even in an age where you can technically start a business with zero capital, you still need some money to establish a company. Even though I managed to launch the business using my small savings and severance pay, the thought of being in the red was terrifying. Rent, food, student loan repayments. Living costs money. And on top of that, I wouldn't be able to send money to my mom anymore. I called my mom to tell her that I had been laid off, was thinking about starting a company, and that I might not be able to send her money for a while. You're starting a business? Do you even have the money for that? Well, I'll manage somehow. But are you going to be okay without the money I send? It's going to be tough. Don't underestimate your mother. I told you before, didn't I? I'll be fine without relying on you. Stop pretending to be so tough, you idiot. Later, my mother handed me some money. It was almost the exact amount I had been sending her as support since I started working. If you succeed, take me on a trip abroad. And someday, bring those important people in your life over to visit. I realized then that I'd never be able to fully repay my mother. Wow, Emily, this is amazing. It's really fun. We had gone out to a diner for lunch for the first time in a while, and we were chatting through the acrylic divider, still wearing our masks. I was starting to get used to this way of dining. The tablet in front of me displayed a puzzle game. It was an original, free game that Emily had created herself. Her programming skills had improved even further. Next, I want to make a game with a story. She had big dreams. But knowing her, it was entirely possible. Emily, who was starting school this year, had grown incredibly over the past year. Not only had she begun to look more like a young lady, but her manner of speaking, which was already mature, had become even more sophisticated. Shortly after our business took off, we moved out of the old, run-down apartment and rented 2 slightly nicer units in a new building. Although it was a bit sad that our improved financial situation meant they no longer needed to live with me, I was thrilled when Anna said, "I often end up working in your apartment anyway, so let's just live in the same building." Last month, someone at the Developmental Support Center suggested that Emily and I visit a mental health clinic. They did a Wechsler intelligence scale test there, and they think she might be gifted. While Emily was comfortable talking with people she knew well, like Anna and me, she struggled to fit in with unfamiliar people or in groups of kids her age, often having trouble keeping up with others or communicating smoothly. Anna said she first noticed something different about Emily when she was around 3 years old. When Emily became deeply engrossed in something, she would lose sight of everything around her, and her language skills developed unusually fast. On the other hand, Emily often had tantrums at daycare. She was also said to struggle with following the teacher's instructions and tended to insist on doing things her own way, which made her seem lacking in cooperation. Ken apparently called Emily creepy. He went as far as to say she was a failed case of developmental disability. Is being gifted really something creepy? Emily, still not fully understanding what being gifted meant, looked down, feeling dejected. Why would you think that? Emily, you're not creepy at all, Anna said, quickly bending down to meet her daughter's eyes. The hatred directed at this little girl at such a young age was still deeply wounding her. But I'm weird and creepy, isn't that why Mom and I were abandoned? I felt a surge of anger rise within me, a fury I had been trying to bury since that man came into our lives. Perhaps Emily's difficulty in connecting with others stemmed from being overly sensitive to people's emotions. Emily, you're not creepy at all. You talk to me, play games with me, and work with me. You're amazing. Emily looked up at me, her eyes filling with tears. Really? I would never lie to you, Emily. Do you know where the word gifted comes from? No. Does it have a meaning? Gifted comes from the word gift. Your talent is a gift from God, and you, Emily, are a gift to me and Anna. You make us happy just by being you. Hearing this, Emily's large eyes overflowed with tears. Thank you. I'm happy when Mom and you are happy, too. Her tearful expression made my heart ache with a sweet, tender feeling. Is this what they call paternal instinct? I met Anna's gaze, and I noticed her eyes were also moist, her nose slightly red. Thank you. She whispered, her words causing that tender ache in my chest to intensify. I had never felt so frustrated by masks and acrylic dividers as I did at that moment. A few days later, I received an unexpected appointment request. It's been a while. Mr. Johnson. I found myself standing in Ken's office. I'm sorry to trouble you by coming here, but it's good to see you're doing well, Ben. Ken said, his unpleasant smile apparent even behind his mask. And you too. Anna, Emily. Yes, for some reason, Ken had insisted that Anna and Emily come along. I had been adamant about refusing, but Anna agreed to it. Despite my protests on the way here, Emily, more composed than I was, tried to calm me down, saying, Ben, Mom's made up her mind. So let's just go with it. Please get to the point, I said. I wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. So I pushed him to state his business right away. Why so cold? It's not often that a family gets to reunite. Ken remarked, causing Anna to visibly react. What do you want? I repeated, making it clear I wasn't interested in small talk. All right, let's get to it. It's simple. I want to buy your company's business, he said. A business acquisition, just as I had expected. Does your father, Mr. Johnson, know about this? I asked. My father isn't involved. This is my company's business, not his. It has nothing to do with his company, Ken replied. But your father is the majority shareholder, isn't he? I pressed. I suspected that his father had likely funded Ken's company as well. It was clear Ken wanted to handle this behind his father's back. Do you really think a small company like yours can stand up to us? Ken retorted. I'm no longer your subordinate. I have no reason to comply. As the representative of my company? I'll respond to your proposal. It's not in our best interest, so we decline, I said calmly. Ken's eyes narrowed, losing their former curve. I've heard about your company, about how much Anna and Emily have contributed. As expected of my daughter, she's brilliant. I could give her a much better education than she could get with you. Ken continued, turning to Anna and Emily. Lowering his mask to his chin, he smiled and added, Anna, let's get married this time. Emily, don't you want to live with your real father? It's sad for a child to grow up with a single mother. Especially when she's about to start school. I clenched my fists so tightly on my knees that I thought I might draw blood. But then, Anna's cold, white hand gently rested on mine. I'm sorry, but I don't understand why you think we would get married. My child's father is already deceased, Anna said. Her voice devoid of emotion. What? Anna, what are you saying? You wanted to marry me, and I'm the father of that child. Ken responded, his voice tinged with anger and desperation. Turning to Emily, he said, Emily, don't you want to live with your dad? Sir, this is our first time meeting, isn't it? You should follow proper infection control and wear your mask if you're going to talk to me. Emily replied, emotionless as she gave him a gentle reminder. Yeah, considering the times we're in, proper infection control is crucial. I couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. It was clear now Ken was one of those men who believed that a woman he had broken up with would always still love him. What a delusional guy. Ken looked like a pigeon that had been struck by a pea shooter as he hurriedly pulled his mask up to cover his nose. This conversation isn't going anywhere. Let's forget this ever happened. Clearly, you don't understand that a small e-commerce site like yours can be crushed at any time, Ken said, attempting to make a last-ditch threat. But before he could finish, a deep voice cut through the room as the door to the meeting room opened. I wasn't aware you had that kind of power, said the voice. Standing in the doorway was Ken's father and my former boss, Mr. Johnson, the CEO. Father, why are you here? Ken stammered. Buying out a business behind my back? Did you have enough funds left in your company for that? Mr. Johnson asked, his tone stern. If we bring in a new venture, we can turn things around. That's why I'm here talking to Ben. Silence. How many times have I told you that your company is beyond saving? Mr. Johnson roared. It turned out that Ken's company had been on the verge of bankruptcy due to the economic downturn over the past year. In a desperate attempt to salvage it, he had set his sights on acquiring my company. It was an unbelievably childish and unrealistic plan. I couldn't help but feel sorry for Mr. Johnson, having someone like this as his heir. Do you really think I don't know anything? I've heard all about how you treated Anna and her daughter, Mr. Johnson said, his voice stern. But that's why I'm trying to make them my family now. Ken stammered. Don't be ridiculous. How rotten can you be? You're a disgrace. A tremendous roar echoed through the room. The sheer intensity of it made Emily cling tightly to my arm. Emily, right? I'm sorry I scared you. Noticing her fear, Mr. Johnson gently apologized to Emily. I was the one who called Mr. Johnson here today. I had done some digging and found out that Ken's company had been teetering on the brink of bankruptcy over the past year. I also heard from former colleagues that his engagement had been called off, though I wasn't sure if the two were connected. Anticipating what today's meeting would be about, I met with Mr. Johnson beforehand and told him everything. It turned out that Mr. Johnson was unaware of the situation with Anna and Emily. He had been initially skeptical of his son's actions. But after seeing a picture of Emily, he seemed to understand. She does bear a resemblance to him when he was a child. I can't believe Ken would do something like this. His voice seemed to tremble slightly. That's why he had agreed to come today. I deeply apologize. An apology won't fix this, and as for you, Ben, last year's dismissal was wrongful. I should have been more involved in personnel matters. I must offer you compensation, Mr. Johnson said. No, that won't be necessary. Instead, I ask that you promise not to have any further involvement with us. I also ask that you refrain from any further dealings with our company. That's all I need, Anna added. Understood. I'll make sure it's all documented properly, Mr. Johnson agreed. During this entire exchange, Ken remained silent, staring down at the floor, not uttering a single word. As we were about to leave, Mr. Johnson looked at Emily with a gentle gaze. If Ken hadn't made such terrible choices, Mr. Johnson might have been a doting grandfather, I thought. Emily would never meet her father or grandparents again. I couldn't help but wonder if this was truly the right decision. As we walked home, Emily holding my hand, I asked her quietly, Emily, aren't you lonely? As soon as I asked, I realized I might have overstepped, so I glanced at Anna, who was walking on Emily's other side. She simply smiled softly and nodded, reassuring me. No, I'm not lonely. I have Mom and you, Ben. And also your mom, Emily replied, her voice filled with contentment. Hearing her say that so naturally, including me in her list of important people, made me incredibly happy. And the fact that she even included my mom, whom she'd only met through video calls, warmed my heart even more. I see. Well, I'm exhausted, so tired. I said, trying to hide the tears that were welling up by pretending to yawn and wiping my eyes. A few years passed, and our company's growth continued with successful business expansions, leading to stable and prosperous operations. Emily is now about to enter 4th grade, turning 10 this winter. Since starting school, she had made friends her age and seemed to be doing well. Just when I thought everything was going well, Emily dropped a bombshell, I'm going to America. It was December 24th. The world was gradually returning to normal, with mask wearing becoming less common. We were having a small Christmas party in my apartment. As we finished our cake, Emily made her sudden announcement. Why? I asked, taken aback. I'd been thinking about it for a while. I want to study in America when I turn 10, she explained. It turned out that Emily's school life, which I had assumed was going smoothly, had actually been quite challenging for her. The rigid structure of Japanese schools, with their emphasis on conformity and synchronized learning speeds, had become a source of both boredom and stress for her. Being exceptionally sensitive to others' emotions, Emily was constantly aware of how her individuality set her apart from her peers and teachers. And she worried excessively about how she was perceived. The doctor at the mental health clinic told me about schools in America that specialize in educating kids like me. I've been researching it and thinking about it ever since, Emily said. Indeed, I had also read that the US is at the forefront of gifted education. A learning environment tailored to each student's unique talents might be exactly what Emily needs to fully realize her potential. So next year, I'm going to America. As Emily smiled after saying this, I realized, almost unconsciously, that tears were streaming down my face. Huh? Ben, why are you crying? Emily asked, looking surprised. It was only then that I noticed I was crying, but once the tears started, they wouldn't stop. If you leave, I'll be lonely. I didn't care if it seemed pathetic. What father wouldn't feel sad about his daughter leaving the nest? Wait. I'm not her father, though, I thought to myself, correcting my own thoughts. Anna, noticing my tears, handed me a handkerchief and gently wiped my face. I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier. Emily wanted to think it through and tell you herself, Anna said softly. Are you going with her? I asked. No, I'm staying in Japan, Anna replied. Watching our exchange, Emily spoke up. Ben, I think of you as my dad. So, I'd be happy if you and Mom stayed together. Her words took me by surprise, and my tears suddenly stopped. Wait, me and Anna? I stammered. Ben, you like Mom, right? And Mom likes you, too. Emily continued, ignoring my flustered response and pressing for confirmation from both of us. The two of us, now both blushing, fell silent. I've noticed how you two have kept your relationship the same, probably because of me. It was pretty obvious that you like each other. So, this is my Christmas present to you both. Mom, you're not coming home tonight. Don't worry, I'll lock up properly. Emily declared, taking charge like an adult, leaving us both speechless. Anna's face turned even redder as she opened and closed her mouth, trying to find the words. And when I come back from America, I'd love to have a little brother or sister. Right, Dad? Mom? Emily added with a big smile as she grabbed the house keys and headed out of the room, cheerfully saying, "Good night." Oh, and I'll take my Christmas present tomorrow morning, okay? She added before leaving. She's a sharp one. I thought. She doesn't need to inherit my sneaky tendencies. As the door closed behind her, Anna and I finally looked at each other. Both feeling a bit awkward. Can I properly confess now? I asked, realizing my daughter had beaten me to the punch. Anna giggled, her cheeks still flushed, and replied. I'd be delighted. With a soft smile and a blush still on her cheeks, Anna looked at me, and once again, I found myself mesmerized, thinking. She really does look like the Virgin Mary. That winter, when I met the beautiful mother and daughter in that rundown apartment, they turned out to be the greatest Christmas gift of my life.